Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November Finance Committee meeting. We have several agenda items to go through this morning, but looks like a relatively short agenda. I am pinch hitting for Dr. Shelton this morning, so I will be not only doing the finance items, but taking us through our agenda as well. So we'll start off 1.01 with the contracts, $15,000 and less. Board Member Eslick and Board Member Haley, just wanted to make a note there. We were having trouble with how the lines were appearing on this. Hannah was working on that this morning, and I do believe that's been corrected. But if you were looking at that before this morning, you may have noticed that was off a little bit, but those are correct at this time. Do we have any questions on the contracts of $15,000 or less?
I do not, Mr. Holder.
Thank you.
Nope, all good here. Thank you.
All right, very good. Moving on. Item 1.02, contracts $15,000 or greater. Just a reminder, we will be going through all of these down through the items on our contract list. So you see a list there in front of you. So we'll start with copy paper, item 1.03, our semi-annual purchase. And Ms. Battaglia, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. You will probably remember about February, we send you for approval a paper bid that we do through the consortium of the Greater Kansas City Suburban School Districts. And that is for a bid that gives us paper by the truckload for about half a school year. We don't have the capacity to bring in a full year's worth of copy paper. And so what we do is we commit through this co-op to purchase copy paper that gets us about 6 months through the school year. And then from there, to make it through the rest of the school year and try to hold those costs down, instead of having to go back out to market every single time we need paper, we do a bid of our own, which is what this bid is that we're bringing to you at this time. And we put that bid out. We got several responses, and we're recommending the award to the Paper Corporation. They were the lowest bidder for purchasing copy paper by the truckload, and it is American-made paper. So that is why we are recommending a award to them. The contract you'll see is for 6 months, and then we're asking for the possibility of 5 additional renewals every 6 months. That's about how long anyone in the paper industry will hold their pricing. So we've structured it so that it's not for an entire year. It's just in 6-month increments to get us through those times where we're not covered by the co-op paper. Are there any questions?
I do not have any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on, Ms. Battaglia, this is your item also as well, our custodial supplies inventory.
Yes. As you know, we stock custodial supplies in our warehouse for the entire school district. It was time to put out a bid for those again. And we have about 100 items that we stock. Those were put out, and due to the responses, there's not just one company that can provide all 100 items. So we are recommending 3 vendors, Clayton Paper, Hilliard, and Purizone. That is based on, the items that they stock. With the 3 of them combined, we've covered all 100 items, and we are recommending that we award to all 3. Any questions on that one? Okay,
I do
thank
not.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Um,
our next item, 1.05, Mrs. Battaglia, and I believe Mr. Connell is also on the call. This is a bid that we have went out for the last few months. I know Dr. Shelton had placed this on our upcoming agenda items for buses. So, Ms. Battaglia, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Yes, as Nathan said, this was a bid that we put out for buses. As you know, we are slowly replacing some of our CNG buses and trying to right size our fleet. So this bid went out and we received 3 responses on this one. Midwest Transit, Central States, and Midwest Bus Sales. There are 2 bus companies that responded that have very similar names. So Midwest Transit is who we are recommending award to on this particular one. We are asking, you'll kind of see in the breakdown of the board item, we are asking for a 66 passenger diesel bus with a lift, 7 47 passenger diesel buses. Also, they will all have lifts. And then, and then the price of the extended warranty for all of those buses gets us to a grand total of $1,488,299. And there is an attachment there that shows you the scoring summary of this, as well as a bid tabulation where you can see how things shook out price wise. Are there any questions there?
I do not have any. Thank you.
I do have a question, actually.
Okay.
So I was looking at the bid tabulation attachment, and I was just curious. I'm just looking at the total, which is a little different than what you said, a million. I guess this is a portion of the bid, but as far as the total goes, it looked like Midwest Transit wasn't the low. And I was just curious why, because there was Midwest Bus Sales as a total of 3.127 was lower than Midwest Transit's bid of 3.177. So I was just curious if it was like a lead time thing or what the reason was to go with the higher total bid.
Yes, and I apologize. I neglected to mention that. It definitely has to do with lead time. Midwest Transit was the only offer that we received that would be able to give us the delivery of those buses by the start of school.
Okay. I
So
figured it
they
had
are
something to do with that.
slightly, yes, yes. And thank you for calling that out. I meant to mention it and thank you.
Oh, no
That is
problem.
exactly why we were recommending award to them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next up on our list, item 1.06, Funds for Learning LLC. This is for our E-rate consulting services. And Dr. Whaley, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good morning, everybody. Just for general knowledge for the public, E-rate is a program that's run by the Federal Communications Commission. The intent is to provide affordable internet connectivity for all schools and public libraries in the United States. And so as a part of that program, there are 2 categories that the government will provide funding for. That's category 1. That's any internet services required to bring service to the districts. So that might be your internet service provider or repair and maintenance. And then the category 2 is anything inside, once it hits inside your buildings. So the network switches, wireless access points, and things like that. So those 2 categories from year to year, our last 5 years, our funding cycle resulted in about just over $3 million in funding from the federal government. So reimbursement for what we have spent to maintain an efficient and high functioning network. So to help manage all that, we use a E-rate consultant from year to year. And what they do is they help process the paperwork, advise us on how to write proposals, how to maintain our documentation. They help us respond to selective reviews, which are kind of like miniature audits. So it's a really valuable service. This year was up for renewal, so we sent out an RFP. We evaluated the vendors, and we are going to recommend the incumbent, which is Funds for Learning, for this year with up to 3 additional one-year renewals. Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whaley. All right, our last item under contracts is item 1.07, Rutherford Learning Group. And Mrs. Merrill, I believe, is on the call. She's going to discuss this item for us.
Sure, good morning. For those of you who are not aware, Dr. Buck has it's called L3. It's a leader learning lab. Say that 3 times fast on a Monday morning. And that group is a group of 36 teachers, 80% teachers, 20% leaders or other roles in the district. And the purpose of Dr. Buck's L3 team is that we are growing leaders based on research-based practices, focuses on improving instruction and leveraging data and improving outcomes for the adults so that we can improve student learning. So Dr. Buck wanted to bring in Mike Rutherford. We worked with Mike Rutherford in the past in our district, actually a few times. The Rutherford group has been a research-based group for over 25 years. And the research that we're doing right now is actually, or the work we're doing right now is based on this book, which is called Artisan Teacher. And it's 23 themes of 23 themes that make a positive impact on the adult as the leader of learning in the classroom. And that's based on thousands of observations that they did in classrooms in order to name these themes. And the purpose of this work is to really capitalize on our talents and then manage the things as adults, as teachers, as instructors that may not be our greatest strength, but managing those, but really leveraging the things that we are doing well in classrooms. And so we are bringing Mike Rutherford in. We have him for a full day and 2 half days. And those 2 half days are built around staff also doing externships. And then as a follow-up to this, I do a artisan themed day with all of our 3rd-year teachers as a piece of this work too. So there's just a small extension based on that. And so that's what that's for, is to bring him in on 3 different days to provide that professional learning for our staff. And it allows them to learn about these themes, reflect on those themes, and then work on application on the in-between times because we meet once a month.
Thank you, Mrs. Merrill. Does anyone have any questions? All right. We'll move on to facilities. Mr. Gurrell, item 2.01, benchmark roof consulting.
All right, thank you. For some reason, my camera is not turning on, but I hope you can hear me. This contract is for design services related to our fiscal year 26 capital improvements for roofing. And this, of course, I should say, is pending bond election. Successful bond election, as you know, would support our capital plan. We may go forward with this, but you know, we would be reevaluating the long-range capital plan if the bond did not go through. So, as you know, I mean, our spending needs for roofing are anywhere from $4 to $5 million a year in capital, and so we use a long-range plan that is managed by Benchmark Roof Consulting, and to identify the next projects that are in line. And so this series of projects involve Great Beginnings at Legacy Park. We're going to start roofing Summit Lakes, and it'll be over a 2-year period to re-roof all of Summit Lakes. The aquatic center, just the area over the pool, that roof needs to be replaced. And then also the two metal roofs on the D&E buildings at Lee Summit High School. So this design fee is approximately $138,000. And we do have a standing contract that the board has approved with Benchmark to provide these services. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Hey, Mr.
Kyle, I
Grow.
have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead, Board Member
Sorry.
Eslick.
Sorry about that. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead, Board Member Eslick.
Okay. I was just trying to educate myself a little bit on what Benchmark does here. So when you say they're doing the design, so are they creating the building plans and the scope of works to be bid out? Is that what they are doing? Kind of like engineering type services?
Yeah, Benchmark is actually a professional engineering firm. And so they will actually be on the AIA contract for the project as the designer of record.
Okay.
They are just a specific engineering consultant that deals with roofing.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, Kyle, my question was about the bond issue. I mean, if we execute this contract, does anything change if the bond issue does not pass as far as this contract is concerned?
No, it wouldn't. We'll be bidding these projects individually. And so, the only thing that we may do is just look at the timing of it. The design information will still be relevant. We just may take a piece of it and move it into the next summer.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gurrell. We'll now move on to the finance section of our report, and we'll start with the transfer of funds. You see there that in October, our transfer needed is $5,990,836.85. So this would be much more in line of quote unquote normal transfers. You recall earlier in the fiscal year in July, we don't have to transfer anything. August is very small. And then now we're into a rhythm where our transfers will generally be in this range, probably between 5 million. It could get up into the $6 million range as well. Any questions on the transfer of funds for October? All right, moving on to 3.02. We will start with our finance and revenue expense report for the end of October. This is representative of the first 4 months of our fiscal year. So we now have reached the third, I guess we are a third of the way through our fiscal year. And so, each month we start to see these things come into focus a little bit more and more. We now have 3 months worth of Fund 2 expenses that primarily of our primary expenses with the teacher's salaries that started in August. So each month, again, it comes a little bit, the picture becomes a little bit clearer as we move towards June. I will say that we are still relatively early, of course, in the fiscal year. I'm going to pause now and see if we're able to bring up Hannah or Linda. Oh, there we go. All right, thank you. And if we could zoom in on that just a little bit. Very good, thank you. So we'll start up in the upper left-hand corner with our revenue trends through October. You will notice that as we look at related to the same period last year, our Fund 1 revenue actually came in. It's from a percentage basis is exactly where we were at the same point the year before. Fund 2 is lower, and we know that is going to continue to be a trend again throughout the year because we will receive a significant percentage of our Fund 2 revenue in June of 2025 due to estimating our basic formula payment, and that has to do with estimating our average daily attendance count to be able to capture that current year account to get paid in this fiscal year. So we will continue to see that lag a little bit. I would anticipate that the range that we're in now, kind of that one, we're just around 2%. It'll fluctuate a little bit, but I don't think we'll get much higher in terms of the gap between where we were at this point last year compared to where we are this year. But we'll continue to monitor that, but don't be alarmed by that percentage difference between October of 23 and October of 24. Debt service just a little bit below. We will get a much clearer idea on debt service as we move through December, January, and we start to see those local tax funds come in. As a reminder, the bond is finished. That revenue item will stay the same as we work through that in this fiscal year. And then capital projects, a little bit of a bump there. We had a payment from MIC, and so we will receive some tax revenue the next few months from the nickel that we put in the capital projects fund. So that will start to come through. But just a reminder there, the largest two pieces of revenue should be in February with the merchants and manufacturing. A large chunk of revenue will come in, as well as then the last piece doesn't come in until our June board meeting when we make that transfer from the general fund to our capital projects fund. Then we'll see another bit of revenue come in. Moving over to the nutrition services fund, you can see as it compares, nope, yeah, you can stay on that sheet. Thank you. As it compares to last year, we're actually looking pretty good from a revenue standpoint. So that's a positive trend. The 23.81%, we know July and August lag with our revenues from nutrition services. So actually being at 23.81 is pretty good through October. So that is encouraging news. Our activity funds and foundations, again, revenues a little bit ahead of where they were at this point last year, but you'll notice when we get down to expenses, they're a little bit ahead as well. So again, that ebbs and flows with mainly the amount of activity that we have going on in those accounts. At the end of the year, it tends to be close to a break even in those activity funds. And then before and after school, just want to highlight there, we continue to make progress. Our revenues appear to be right on track, just a little bit below 33% with revenues. Expenses are a little bit higher, but again, we should see those lag a little bit as we go through the year. And if not, we can still make an adjustment there. But the overall trend, as we'll discuss here in a few minutes, is definitely positive in before and after school services. So looking at our expenses, again, going down and focusing on the operating fund and the special revenue fund. From an expense standpoint, Fund 1 is trending right now lower, which is always a good thing in the expense category. And we're coming in almost at 1.5% lower. So that is a good trend. And that's one that we will hope to see continue as we move through the fiscal year. Now, Fund 2 is the opposite of that. It's higher. However, I do want to note there is a significant expense that came through for the special revenue fund. It was a tuition payment. We pay tuition to the Cass Herndon as well as the Raytown School District for their technical school. We still have several students at our high schools that attend those to get training in various trades and programs that we don't currently offer at Summit Technology Academy. And we still have a significant amount of students in total, around 100, that will spend part of their day at those technical centers. And the reason that's significant for October is we paid that bill in October this year. Last year, we didn't pay it until November. And it's a little over $800,000. So it's not a small expense. So as we look at this in December, through the end of November, I would anticipate that Fund 2 will come back down a little bit. As we've talked about the last couple months, it is trending a little bit higher from a percentage standpoint. So we will continue to monitor that. But that, the over 0.5% difference that you see now, I anticipate that gap will shrink as we look at expenses through November. Because when you back out the 800,000, it gets a lot closer to the 26.59% number that is representative of last year. Moving through the debt service fund, again, that's just expenses. You do see some interest expense that is typical for this time of year. Bond fund is finished. We won't have any more expenses that come out of that unless there would be some new expenses in June if there is success in April. And then the capital projects fund, as we've talked about, you continue to see those expenses. We have some more that are teed up, some possible capital project expenses. When we do come back in probably February, potentially January for our first budget amendment, you will see a requested increase in the capital projects fund. So we'll watch that. Some of those expenses are bond related, that we will be able to request reimbursement for. But, we're watching that very carefully because we want to make sure that if for whatever reason there were not bond funds available in June, that we still have a remaining fund balance in the capital projects fund. So we are monitoring that carefully. There will be a requested increase. It'll be slight, probably between 5 to 10%. But I did just want to preview that, and there'll be a few months from now that is in the form of a budget amendment. But those expenses that are exclusive of bond, not related to potential bond expenses, are really slowing down. And so we won't see a whole lot of that moving forward. But there are, of course, some potential expenses that could happen between now and June. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for that in our budgeting. Nutrition services, you see as we trend compared to last year, very close. We're down a little bit, which is always good. But again, 0.3% is a good place to be at the end of October. Activity fund is a little higher in expense, but again, it's relative, and our revenues are higher, so that makes sense. And then before and after school services, that 40%, again, in a perfect world, it would be 33% or less. But I'm not bothered by that at all. And if we have to amend that budget slightly, it will be fine because we continue to really make good progress. So if you drop down to the restricted funds at the bottom right corner, you will see our current fund balances in those restricted funds. Nutrition services is lower, but we started the year lower, and overall our nutrition services fund is in terms of trajectory where we are at this point in the fiscal year compared to last year. We are making some headway there. We're still in a position where we may deficit spend slightly, but right now it's looking like it's not going to be as much as it was last year, which is a good thing. Our activity fund, again, overall total fund balance is very similar to where we were at this point last year. And I just want to highlight that before and after school services, we are getting very close. I'm hopeful that maybe when we do this in January, which would be through the month of December, if not January, then definitely February, that we are going to see that fund be in the positive, which will be the first time in my 3.5 years here that it has been. So it's been a long journey, but we're getting very closely to getting that back in the positive category. So that's a good thing. Looking at our current fund balance, that 37.4 million, as you look at that, that's not the lowest that we will see that. We'll see the low point come at the end of next month. We have not received any current year tax revenue yet from the county. They usually pause in November, and so we have had 2 weeks without any type of remittance from Jackson County. It was supposed to happen this past Friday, but it didn't. But I would anticipate that we'll receive our first revenue that should be higher than the past months. We should receive that this Friday. That being said, we typically don't get a lot between now and November 30th. So next month will probably be our low point. But overall, of course, we know that we've trended a little lower there, but we'll see that rebound. And then as we get through December and January, those actual fund balances will shoot back up. And then as we work through February, and then we kind of start the downward trend again till we get to December of 2025. Any questions on the revenue and expense report for October? All right. We'll look at the investment report next. Just want to highlight there again, we have several maturities that are coming up. In fact, we had one, the 1.1 million that you see there. That matured in the time between the end of October and our meeting today. And you'll see this next month, but I wanted to highlight something that we did with those funds. That 1.1 million that you see there, we decided to split that up, and we purchased a 2-year treasury, and then we went out and grabbed a 5-year treasury. And as you recall, these funds are really long term, and in the school investment world, long term means 5 years or less, because we can't go out longer than 5 years. But at the rate we had, that 1.625%, we had the opportunity. Both of those we were able to grab at over 4%, and so we felt like splitting the difference was the right thing to do. It's hard to go out really any length of time, even though we know it's probably the right thing to do, just because we are still in this environment where our liquid funds, as you can see down below, are earning a higher rate than what we have and what we could get going out 3 months, 6 months, a year, all the way out to 5 years. Right now, that liquid rate of return is the highest. But we know that, we don't know 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, where those interest rates will be. And so we thought splitting the difference on that, the $1.1 million that recently expired was a good route to take and a prudent route. And so as we see those things come off here in the next few months, some lower amounts with CDs in March, but we'll likely take a similar approach and just try to diversify a little bit more within that 5-year window. Any questions on the investment report through the end of October? All right, our last item is the balance sheet. Just want to highlight there, some things that really we've already talked about. You notice our debt service fund, the level that it's at. We still have over $10.5 million. Most of our revenue will come in over the next 60 to 90 days into the debt service fund. And then in March, we'll make the primary principal and some interest payments in the debt service fund. But overall, the 10.5 being where it's at now is right where we thought it would be. So we're looking good there. Capital projects, again, I've highlighted this the last couple months. On paper, we're underwater there. But that will turn around, but it won't probably. It depends on how much we do that could be related to things that might be reimbursed by the bond in April, but it may be June. Remember that we have a $5 million transfer that we've currently budgeted for right now, and our ending fund balance was projected to be just below $5 million with the budget that we approved. So it may very well be that our capital projects fund, that we don't make it completely whole until that last board meeting in June, where we make that budget transfer. But we'll continue to monitor that. There are some other levers that we could pull if we needed to build that fund balance up in the interim. But the most important point there is that once we get to June, obviously that fund will be back in the positive, and it'll just be a question of how much we end up back in the positive. We've done a lot of capital project work, a lot of capital project expenses, and it's all been needed, but we have been aggressive. And it is something that, as we move beyond this fiscal year into FY26, FY27, those capital project expenses, we'll still have some and they'll still be there, but the volume and the dollar amount that we've done the last 3 years, we'll have to ratchet that back just a little bit. Any questions on the balance sheet for the end of October? All right. Our last item is just to preview our future agenda items. Again, we ask every month, Dr. Shelton asks that we update this list. And so we try to do a good job of previewing expenses. As we all know, in a district this size, there are a lot of things that are happening on a month-to-month basis. And so hopefully we continue to find this form useful and helpful, and an idea of what is coming up, in December, January, spring, even going out to the winter of 2025. All right, before we wrap up this meeting, does anyone have any questions?
No questions from me. Thank you, Mr. Holder. You did a great job covering for Dr. Shelton.
Thank you.
None here as well, Mr. Holder, and thank you for the job you did as well.
All right, very good. Thank you, Board Member Eslick, Board Member Haley, for attending this morning, and as well as all of our LSR7 staff members who helped present these agenda items. Everybody have a great Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holder.